So, Ed, thank you for joining us here on the Crypto Princesses Crypto Stories series. How are you today?
Very good. And you?
All good, all good. I am so excited to hear your story. You're actually the first person who does advocacy on a professional level with institutions that has been on the channel. So I'm super excited.
Great.
Um, just before we get started into your crypto story, tell me, if I was to meet you in high school, what kind of person were you?
Oh boy. Um, Super nerd, but on the basketball team and debate club and yeah, just an overachiever that never had a lot of trouble with school. That was one of the first kids to have a computer and uh, yeah, and hung out with friends, but at the same time knew that I was going to do great things. At that point, when you're 18, you think you can be president, and you until you discover that you're not. But no, a lot of ambition, a lot of hope for the future, but definitely one of the people that loved finding the new technologies and grabbing onto them.
So after high school, did you go off to university?
Yeah, so I started at the Air Force Academy in Colorado. I wanted to be a pilot. Don't know why. Who remembers their 18-year-old self, right? And you get to the Air Force Academy and find out that it's not really university. It's you're in the military, and then when you have free time, you get to do 21 credit hours of work, 6 classes a day. And so the military academies like the West Points and the Annapolis and stuff, they're hard, incredibly hard. And somewhere through my junior year, found out that I wasn't going to be a pilot, but because of my eyesight. And you're at the Air Force Academy, and you're not going to fly. And so I did what any normal 20-year-old would do, and I kind of self-destructed and got myself in a lot of trouble. So transferred to the University of Southern California, where I was studying industrial engineering, and that's kind of where I started on the path of being in manufacturing.
Awesome, awesome. Let's fast forward to 2011. So that's very, very early into Bitcoin and crypto. So for those people who are unaware, the Genesis block for for Bitcoin was on the 3rd of January 2009. You got into crypto, you got into Bitcoin in 2011. Tell us, how did you discover crypto? How did you discover Bitcoin?
Yeah, it was a Gawker article. There's a famous Gawker article that was out in 2011 that a few other well-known people in Bitcoin saw the same article, and it basically just talked about how you could buy stuff on the dark web with this money. And so I bought 200 Bitcoin at $6 each, and couldn't figure out the dark web. As technical as I was, just the Tor browser and everything you had to do, I couldn't figure it out, and I gave up. And then about a year later, I needed $1,200, and so I sold the 200 Bitcoin at $6. I didn't know in between it had gone to 37. I think if I'd known that, I don't know if I would have sold so quick, right? And then about a year and a half later, somebody asked me, "What's this Bitcoin thing?" And I said, "Well, it's like this internet money. It's like $6. Let's check." And we go to check, and it's near 1,000. And I had this little heart attack, and I'm like, okay, maybe I didn't sell it. And I go to mountgox.com, and it was 404. It was gone. And so the story is always, should I be sad that I didn't self-custody those Bitcoin, or should I be happy that I got my $1,200 back, right? And didn't have 200 Bitcoin sitting there at Mount Gox for all those years. In any case, at that point, I kind of bought a bunch of another coin, and then saw it as just
So when
speculation.
you saw it at 1,000 US dollars, was that in 2016?
No, that'd have been 13. It was like a peak. It was just a coincidence that it was right at a peak of a price. So even when I got in 2013, then the price started to come down in 14. And so, yeah, it's always the.
Let's talk about 2013 then. So 2013 was Bitcoin's first bull run. In 2013, we had two peaks. We had one in April, then we had one at the end of the year. So it was probably the end of the year.
Yeah, it was Thanksgiving.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Awesome, awesome. And then you decided to sell.
No. So I was out from 2012 all through. I didn't even think about it again, hadn't heard about it again. And then the end of 2013, when this friend said, "What is it?" and I saw it, I didn't get into Bitcoin because it was near 1,000, but I did get into something else that I just won't mention because I don't want. I'm a Bitcoiner now, right? But got into that cheaper, and then from there it was just 2014 and 15 was just gambling and speculating on other coins.
Okay, so for those people who are unaware, super, super early, 2013 was Bitcoin's first bull run. 2014 came along, it was the first bear market for Bitcoin. Bitcoin, literally went downhill in 2014. I think it actually made its bottom in 2015. Then we had 2016. Let's talk about 2016. So 2016 was a halving year. I think the price of Bitcoin was started off something like $400, and the all-time high in 2016 was around about $1,000. It was a halving year, right before the 2017 bull run, Bitcoin's second bull run. Do you remember 2016? Do you remember what you were doing?
I don't remember 2024. No, no. I mean that I often say this when I'm giving talks or on podcasts. I'm like, I wish we all would have been keeping journals. We all would have been keeping journals, right, of what we were thinking, how we were seeing it. I remember like in 2013, 14, 15, I didn't like the Bitcoiners because they were all toxic maxis, and they were like, there's no other coin than Bitcoin, and I didn't understand why, and I didn't dive into it. It was about 2016 when I did a deeper dive and looked at the code and kind of started to understand what Bitcoin was, and went pretty much all in 2016 with my retirement accounts and everything. Right, I was like, okay, this is better money. And then
you retired around about this time, and you put your savings.
No. I took the retirement account out of stocks and moved it over to what was called Bitcoin IRA, which is a Bitcoin retirement account.
Okay. Let's talk about 2017.
Yep.
2017, Bitcoin's second bull run. It's actually my favorite bull run. I absolutely love it. Started off the year around about $1,000. Ended the year at $20,000. That was literally a chart that kind of went like this, and then it just went straight the way up. I absolutely love 2017. It was the first time that institutions really got into the Bitcoin space, the crypto space, because of ICOs. Round about this time, 2017, were you looking into ICOs, ICOs and things like that?
Yeah, no, in Amsterdam, there were ICO meetups, and then you'd go to Berlin and there'd be an ICO conference. And I just, every time I listened to one, I could never pull the trigger. I had a lot of Ethereum at that time, and all these ICOs wanted the Ethereum, and I listened to them, and there were some crazy ones. There was one that I really liked, which I think is still in operation, called Self-Key, and I didn't get in on the ICO, but I was actually working for them for a short while. It was about self-sovereign identity, using a token to identify yourself online rather than sending your actual photo of your passport, your photo of this. You could just send the token which says, yes, this person is who he says he is. That was the only one that I ever liked that I might have got into for a while, but not like as a ICO heavy. So I kind of dodged the bullet on the ICO craze.
Were you a Bitcoin maxi round about this time, 2017? Because we did also have the block size wars, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've never been a Bitcoin maxi. I call myself a Bitcoin inclusionist, right? Because it's like, if you can't do it on Bitcoin, well, then shut up. If you're saying like, hey, this that they're doing over on Solana is a scam or whatever. It's like, okay, but can you do that on Bitcoin? They're like, no. Well, then let them build the tech, let them build the concept over on whatever chain that is, and when Bitcoin's ready, we can bring it back over here. So it's like the divisiveness and alienating people is just pointless, and so it's we know Bitcoin is the best chain. We know that Bitcoin's going to win. Just let's all stay together on it.
No, I'm into that. So how deep were you going into, um, for example, everything behind Bitcoin? For example, things like the code, the miners, all the rest of it. How much research were you doing around about this time?
Um, Spending a lot of time on it actually in 2017, 2018, because the job that I had that I was working at in Europe didn't require a lot of time. I had a mining rig in the shoe closet in the house that we were renting in Amsterdam, and the owner of it, it was funny when I moved into the house. It was furnished, and in the office there was stuff, and he had Bitcoin magazine, and I called him and I'm like, hey, you had some Bitcoin magazine here in the office. He's like, yeah, I'm into Bitcoin. You're into Bitcoin? I'm into Bitcoin. It was just an incredible coincidence. And he's a great friend to this day. But the rent for that house, the utilities were included. And I wasn't doing it on purpose, but I put this mining rig in the shoe closet and was, earning crypto every month. He finally gets the electric bill after about 5 months. And he's like, what are you doing in my house? And I was like, is it a lot of electricity? He's like, it's like $500 a month of electricity. I'm like, oh, well, sorry about that. And so I sold the mining rig. But anyways, so yeah, I was, looking at all kinds of different chains, learning more about Bitcoin. The block size wars were going on. It just, there was so much going on at that time, that you could get yourself absorbed in any one of the facets of it, week by week, month by month.
And you were able to find some sort of community?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Amsterdam to this day has one of the biggest and best communities in the world. There was a meetup called Bitcoin Wednesday, which was, I think, the first Wednesday of every month. And at the peak, December, December 2017, January 18. I mean, there was 300, 400 people at that meetup. It was really cool. And those people were from all over Europe, but mostly Dutch. And, to this day, when I go to like Bitcoin Amsterdam, I see a lot of them.
Oh, that's so sweet. Tell me about your family. When they saw your obsession, they saw you deep diving into this crazy internet money, because you were still very, very early.
Yeah, I think, I mean, every family, every couple manages money differently, and my wife has always just kind of trusted that I was going to do the best thing, and so as long as there was money in the account for the monthly expenses and stuff, she didn't really worry herself with it. Of course, in 17, when it was hitting a peak, and then I bought a boat, she's like, can we afford this boat? And I'm like, look, look at here. And then in 21, when it was just, going crazy and we're taking these big vacations. And so I think it really stresses her out, the volatility, but she doesn't even know half of the stress that I feel with the volatility. This year has been incredibly tough. And so she kind of knows when Bitcoin's not doing well based on my moods. And then she knows when it's doing really well based on my moods. My 17-year-old son, he went to Bitcoin 21 with me in Miami when, Jack Mallers did the Die on this Hill speech, and when Bukele announced that they were going to make it the legal tender in El Salvador. He did his 10th grade paper on Lightning for Education. He did his senior paper on SHA-256. So, he's not a big Bitcoiner, but he gets it and he finds it really cool and interesting. It's not that hard to explain Bitcoin to kids, because we've learned bad money, and now we have to unlearn bad money. They just learn good money from the start, and they go, well, that makes more sense.
Okay, so just as we end the second bull run in Bitcoin's history, 2017, 2018 was a bear market. It hit a lot of ICOs, etc. They just turned out to be scams. The SEC came in, it issued Wells notices to cryptocurrency projects, cryptocurrency exchanges, all the rest of it. We hit 2018 and we went down straight into a bear market. At this time, were you aware of the difference between a bull market and a bear market?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really know what the cycles were yet. There's a guy here in Atlanta named Mike Casey who had written an article. I'm going to forget the year, but he wrote an article about the price and the cycles, and how not to predict the price of Bitcoin or crypto in general. So in 18, when it was going down and down, I wrote it all the way down with it, because after 17, you're hoping that it's going to come back up. And then in 21, when it's going up and up and up, and then 22, you write it all the way down because you hope it's going to come back up. And then now this time, it's like, well, I'm not going to do that again. And then it breaks the cycles and screws you up. Another comment I'd make on your saying that the ICOs are all scams, I wouldn't agree with that.
All of them. Some of them.
Yeah, no, there were some rug pulls. There were some people that deliberately set up an ICO to defraud people out of their money, but most of them were good and well-intentioned. They were just they were people that just weren't competent. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't have any governance, risk, and control in their business. And then, of course, without regulation, without experience, it's going to crash. And so I feel the same way about like Sam Bankman-Fried and Mashinsky. They weren't bad, evil people trying to rip people off. They were just incompetent, and we keep on trying to find that bad guy that was trying to steal our money or do a bad thing. And, Bernie Madoff, yeah, he was a bad person. He knew what he was doing. He was running a Ponzi scheme. Great. But these other ones, they're just not competent. They don't know what they're doing. And so that's always the first thing I look for. I'm like, does this person really know what they're doing? Do they have good controls in their business, or is this going to end badly?
Okay, so that was 2018, the bear market. 2019, the recovery year. Let's talk about 2020. So 2020 was a halving year. But it also, the pandemic hit, and in March 2020 we went from 9,200 and we crashed over 60% to 3,800 or something similar.
How do you remember all this? Or do you have it written on the screen in front of you?
On the screen, no,
it's impressive.
I go back and I look at the history. I can literally, I love the history of the charts.
That's great.
The reason why it fell, or the reason why it goes up, and all the rest of it. That's like what I love. So in March 2020, the pandemic hit. People were losing jobs. People were dying. There were shutdowns. It was a very, the environment didn't seem very safe. There was a lot of uncertainty going around. What were you doing with your Bitcoin? Were you selling? Were you buying, or just hodling?
Yeah, no, I think somewhere in that 2016 timeframe, I decided that I wasn't going to hold anything in fiat, right? If I had wealth, it was going to be in crypto maybe, but Bitcoin mostly. And so, no, I would never, whenever somebody says, oh, are you going to sell your Bitcoin? I'm like, and buy what? Well, dollars. And I'm like, why would I buy dollars? It's a bad investment. They're melting, they're inflating. And so, no, I had figured it out, I guess now almost 10 years ago, that you put it all into Bitcoin, and then somebody has to really convince you of why you would invest in something besides Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
It does. So you kept your Bitcoin in 2020. Were you buying more?
I wasn't. I was working for a software startup that required investment. So I was selling a little bit of Bitcoin to invest in the software startup, and I was working for the software startup, not earning money. So 2020, 21, tough years, because I was selling Bitcoin every month to pay the bills while I was working on some side businesses that didn't work out.
Let's talk about 2021. So 2021, it was third bull run. So 2020 halving year. Normally we have a parabolic bull run the year after. 2021 started off the year around about 30,000. We went literally straight up into April 2021, where we hit a local top of 64,000.
Yeah.
The 64, I think 69 was in November. Okay. $64,000 US. China FUD hits.
Yeah.
We went literally cut in half. We had all the Tesla stuff as well. And then we ranged at 50% at round about 30,000 US dollars, in that range for a good couple of months. Bitcoins were taken off the exchanges, the supply shop, and also the altcoins, etc., led to the end of the year all-time high in November 2021 at 69,000 US dollars. It was a double top. We did have one in 2013, but this one was even more extreme, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
How did you live through that? How was it for you?
Oh no, it was 22 was horrible. You know,
21.
yeah, well, I know the 21 was, it was going up, and it was great. You know, a couple vacations, and no, it was fantastic. But then once it started turning down, I wanted to believe that this time was different. And every time you hear this time is different, it's you know bad things are coming.
Mhm, mhm. So, so you took some really nice vacations.
Ah,
Um,
not amazing. Just, you know, decided to spend a little bit instead of just being completely frugal and hodling. But yeah.
The thing is, 2021 was actually very, very difficult because we did hit the Pi cycle top in April 2021, just like we hit it in April 2013. But in in 2013, November 2013, we hit the Pi cycle top as well. We didn't hit it in 2021. So there was loads of these indicators. Bitcoin was going up in price, but there was loads of indicators that were not being hit. So people naturally thought we're going into a super cycle. But then obviously 2022 happened and we got the bear market. Now, 2022 bear market was absolutely brutal. We had black swan events like Luna, FTX, 3 Hours Capital, Voyager. It was absolutely brutal. What was 2022 like for you?
The software startup I invest in failed. The restaurant that I invested in failed. Yeah, 22 was. I don't like to talk about 22. No, but it was just horrific. But it was just a great lesson as well, because then it prepared me for, you know, going forward. There's a very fantastic book by Daniel Pink called The Book of Regret or something like that. And it's all about regrets and what they mean. And the reason you have regrets and remember these regrets is to provide defenses so that you don't do the same thing again. Right? It's not to torture you. It's not to say like, oh, you're a bad person. It's literally to protect you from the future. So all those regrets that I have from 22, I still think about now when I look at the market and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to sell this or buy that. And I'm like, okay, but what if this happens again? So, you know, when you've been in this longer and longer, that this time is different is that big red flag that you should probably say like, no, it's not.
Okay, so that was 2022. We had 2023, which was obviously just a recovery year. We had 2024. So last year for us, because we haven't, we're still in December 2025. So 2024, a lot of legitimacy was added into the Bitcoin space because Trump ran on crypto, on Bitcoin, and he actually got into the White House, as we all know. We had a decent alt season in quarter one. We had a small alt season in quarter four. We had an extended meme season. What was 2024 like for you? Because I know a lot of things changed for you in 2024. We'll get into we'll get into strategy in a second. But generally, the first part of 2024, what was that like for you?
I was working for Mara on their sidechain project. It's called Enduro. It was a Bitcoin native layer 2 where you would peg in 100 Bitcoin and have 100 Bitcoin on the sidechain. And so it was fun. I was going to technical events, and all that layer 2 was, it was Bitcoin season 2. It was just booming, the whole layer 2 environment. And so I was really focused in on that. But yeah, nothing in particular other than when the price is going up, everybody's in a better mood. right? And everybody wants to talk about the future, and they want to talk about new projects. And so it was a good time to be in this layer 2 environment.
Mhm. So in December 2024, you became the Director of Bitcoin Advocacy at Strategy.
Correct.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I know they have an annual conference called the Bitcoin for Corporations conference, and since I had worked at Bitcoin conference previously, we knew each other well. They at the end of 24, they had gotten really busy buying a lot of Bitcoin, and so they needed help with the conference, and so that was the call, was like, hey, come help us with this conference. And when strategy calls, you drop everything. So I accepted the job and was commuting back and forth to the Washington D.C. area.
Oh my God, so they called you. You didn't apply for it.
No,
They
I saw it. Well, I mean, I saw I saw the job posting online, but it was, yeah, I better just leave it at that.
Okay, awesome. So tell me what was it like? What were your responsibilities at as the Director of Bitcoin Advocacy at Strategy?
I was responsible for the Bitcoin for Corporations conference, and then also, advocating in general with the Bitcoin Treasury strategy, the playbook that Strategy and Michael Saylor was advocating for, and then also educating the employees. Holding lunch and learns and teaching just about Bitcoin in general to the 1,400 employees worldwide.
Mhm. What was it like working with Michael Saylor? So I presume you've met him a couple of times at all of these conferences that you'd been to.
Yeah, no. So Michael's the chairman, so he's not involved day to day or even in the strategy, the software company business. So no, I met him plenty of times, but didn't really work with him intensely or a day to day basis. But no, I mean, he's a super genius that comes up with ideas and understands Bitcoin at levels that we can't even comprehend, and has the complete respect of all the employees there, and his ability to come up with ideas and implement them, and then just to see the outside world and how they react to him when he speaks and people coming up to him at conferences and crying and saying, "You changed my life," and it's really impressive. It's phenomenal.
Mhm, mhm. So your responsibilities was not just being inside of Strategy, teaching people inside of Strategy. You were teaching other corporations and other CEOs, etc., about Bitcoin. Is that correct?
At the via the conference, yes, but no, I mean, in general, we had the playbook on the website. So if somebody called and said, "Hey, how do you do this?" We'd point them to the website. If a large enough company called, we'd have a call with them and say, "Hey, here's what you need to be doing." But surprisingly, not a lot of companies called because it was all on the website. They would look at the website and they wouldn't need to call because it's all there. But when I would go to different conferences, of course, people wanted to hear about the treasury strategy, and we would share it with them.
Mhm, mhm. It's a very prestigious role as well, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one to have on the resume for sure.
Mhm, mhm. Awesome. Okay, and then this year, let's talk about this year. First of all, let's talk about July, round about July this year. You set up your own business. I believe you're the president of Bitcoin Treasuries Media.
Yeah,
That sounds that sounds very prestigious. That sounds
no, I
very
know.
interesting.
The president of a company of two people. No, so I left strategy for a few reasons. We don't need to dive into those. It's just I was commuting and needed more of a challenge, etc. But I called Tim Kotzman, who does the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast, and said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to do this conference in 6 weeks." And so I said, "Let's do this together." And we did the Bitcoin Treasuries Unconference in New York in September, and decided, "Hey, we need to create a company and start, you know, seeing what we can make of this." So between his podcast and we're going to be doing 21 events next year, 12 online and 9 in person. It's exciting because we've got this focus on Bitcoin treasuries. And then I'm also the director, or what am I? I'm the Bitcoin strategy advisor I think is my title with Arcadia B. Where is it? It's right here on the side of the hat, right? Arcadia B is the first Bitcoin treasury company in Mexico. Since I had lived in Mexico for 13 years, I'm fluent in Spanish. It was just a natural fit, and I invested in that company. And then I'm also the Bitcoin strategy advisor for that company.
Mm-hmm. So what's the mission of Bitcoin, of your company, of the Bitcoin advocacy? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, so if it's a good question to ask in terms of what is the mission. Tim and I have both done well in Bitcoin, and so I would say that at that vision mission level, it's to help provide information so that people make smart investments, and that there aren't scammers and fraudsters out there taking people's money. So when we get calls or inquiries from treasury companies or service providers, and it doesn't pass the smell test, then we can kind of be that first line of defense. Does that mean we're never going to interview someone or promote someone that ends up being a bad player? Probably not. But at least our mission is to provide information and provide that layer of trust between investors and service providers and treasury companies, so that we don't have another FTX, we don't have another Celsius.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what actually goes into planning these conferences?
Oh my God, do we have would we have another hour? There's a bunch of different elements, from venue selection to ticketing to getting your speakers to getting your sponsors to coming up with the agenda. And it's all process oriented, and it just takes work. It takes people to do all those things. There's a few things that we're doing differently than all the other conferences in terms of how we do the agenda, in terms of venue. We've been to a lot of conferences. I've been to, you can't see it, but over on my door, I've got the lanyards from some of my favorites, and that's like 20 alone. But then there's probably another 100 that I've just thrown away, right? And I think conferences in general, events in general, have kind of fallen into this routine of panels and bad presentations and people not being able to meet who they need to meet because they don't have the right name badge. And so it's about great content. It's about getting the right speakers that talk about the right subjects. It's about finding ways for people to connect at these events, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody ever goes to a conference and go, wow, I'm going to go back to that one because the food was great, right? That's not the reason, right? The reason is because they had a good time, the content was amazing, and they met the people they needed to meet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely awesome. So tell me now how your wife feels, because she's probably retired. Is she retired? She probably wants you to spend.
No. She works in the public school system here in the US.
So she's happy for you to travel around, do all of these conferences, etc., not having you at home.
Oh, you'll have to ask her, but yeah, she in any marriage, I think there's space for separation. So I think it works out good that we have a few days off every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Ed, for coming on and sharing your crypto story with us. That was amazing. I'm going to put all your links down below, and hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you soon and frequently at other events and online on your channel.